Autocannons are my favorite heavy weapon type for Space Marines, and since Terminators are the primary users, this seems to be a marriage made in heaven. At least as far as you can tell, when talking about a dystopian universe where transhuman warriors fight for mankind's survival. So today we have Terminators from different ages, from the horusheresy era and from the current 40k setting. Different styles, but same weapons, at least as far as I can tell. And of course, they are both from bloodangels, legions and chapters. From the outside, the differences are minimal. They are different lineups, so armed with a pinch of salt and wisdom, let's look at them in more detail. Same packaging inside the box themselves, but while the Indomitus Terminator is pretty bare bone in terms of accessories, the Crimson Paladin comes with a rich panoply that includes the autocannon, a powersword and a shield. And we can also admire the stylistic differences between the two Terminator patterns. Both are bloodangels, but the Cataphractii Terminator on the right looks quite more regal in his armor decorations. Let's start from the Crimson Paladin, who takes the classical Cataphractii pattern we have seen in the past, and makes it more elegant and decorated, including the simulator cloth piece. Nothing fancy on the back though. The big pauldrons have the now standard ball-jointed pauldron articulation for ridiculously good posing. There is no problem on either arm, so if you decide to either fire or be prepared for melee combat, you will have no problem. The long legs are unimpeded by the sculpt in their movements, so they can run and kick without any problem. Feet can also move with reason, and going back to the arms, they can also bend reasonably well at the elbow. Nothing new, but the armor decorations are quite unique and compared to our Terminator a great look, at least in my opinion, and beyond the mere practicality of a power armor made for destruction. Shading here and there, and golden rivets that contribute to a great aesthetics. Before we jump to the autocannon, let's take a look at the melee options. We have this huge power sword with a very peculiar shape and a nice gradient for the grey color. One day I would like JOYTOY to also include some crackling lightning effect for additional coolness. Then we have this big thunder shield, which is again decorated according to the highly stylized patterns used for the armor, so they complement each other nicely. There is no shading, but the paint looks neat without any visible mistake. It is a shield designed for the Crimson Paladins, and I think it will fit well within my posing ideas for this figure. The autocannon is as big as you would expect, with rotary tubes painted with some gunmetal grey that breaks the overall black plastic case. There are of course bloodangels iconography at the back and the front, but otherwise it will be a completely generic weapon. And I like that there is no special connection or adapter required, so you can pull this weapon and use it for some other figures, like the tartaros praetor we have seen a while ago. If we now look at the Indomitus pattern Terminator, besides the clear differences in design, there is also a different shade of red. The 40k Terminator on the right is quite darker than the Cataphractii one. Then the autocannon is also connected to the arm through the cable, so you cannot move it easily to another figure. Articulations for legs and arms are in line with what we have seen for the ultramarine brothers, and very comparable to the other design from the horusheresy era. This one also comes with a power fist for fisting enemies in the face, apparently, and very little else. It is basically a reskin of the ultramarine one, with all the pros and cons. It has none of the fancy decorations that adorn the Cataphractii. Definitely the 40k bloodangels have lost a big deal of their elegance in 10,000 years. And if we look at the helmets and the upper torso, this is particularly evident. It is like comparing the rich and poor cousins to each other. Which is the best, though it is a matter of personal tastes. The Cataphractii autocannon has at least some more bloodangels inspired decorations, and it is more compact, because of the shorter length than the 40k equivalent. In terms of paint job, they are more or less comparable too, a black body with gunmetal barrels and rivets painted in steel-like color. Definitely the Cataphractii autocannon is a good choice if you want to reuse it somewhere else, while the 40k one is a bit trickier. Personally, I prefer to have some flexibility in equipping my figures, so the Cataphractii autocannon is the winner for me. I don't know you, but I always expected the Cataphractii to be much bulkier than the JOYTOY rendition. For sure they are when compared to the normal Legionnaires, but if we bring in the Indomitus Terminator models, they look quite slender. The legs, for example, they look particularly skinny on the Cataphractii compared to the Indomitus. I think that those side hip plates also contribute to the final result. In terms of upper body instead, the Cataphractii is a bit wider while being of comparable height. Again, very different designs to appeal everyone's tastes. In terms of details, I think that the Cataphractii wins hands down. It has even a half tunic with a tabard included. The Indomitus instead is quite essential, conceding very little to frills, besides the classical Aquila and Crux Terminators on the shoulder. Even the power face is quite unadorned, even if I can assume that this does not make it less functional against untold hordes of Xenos and heretics. But if you need to decide which armor to bring to a ceremony or some other cool event in the dystopian future, I will advise you to always keep a Cataphractii suite of Terminator armor. On a dirty battlefield instead, an Indomitus Terminator looks much more practical to maintain, and keep in a decent looking state. Let's do some comparisons. First of all, the Indomitus here is clearly a reskin of the initial Ultramarines one, here with a screaming captain's head. If we go back in time and bring Dominus in, we notice that even the more contemporary Terminator armors can be richly decorated, and the Blood Angel style is easy to recognize. And we can also admire the different mold used in the models, and it was not even far back in time, even. Maybe one day I will give the mighty Davinos some upgraded legs and make him great again. Until then, he is small, but still makes the more recent Terminators models look like plebs compared to him. The Cataphractii Terminator instead looks to have accepted the challenge, and is posing like a boss in the group reunion. Let's bring the tartaros Terminators in now, with the Sergeant from the Sons of Horus and the bloodangels praetor. The latter and the Cataphractii share all the glorious look typical of the bloodangels, while the Son of Horus is essential in his look, but he still appears to be wearing a premium armor compared to the Indomitus bloodangel. Size-wise, they are quite comparable to each other in both height, width and depth. Again, I would have expected the Cataphractii to be much bulkier, the bulkier of the group, but apparently this is not the case, at least in current JOYTOY rendition. I am really tempted to give the Tartaros Praetor the autocannon and make the Crimson Paladin Cataphractii a melee first character. We'll see in the future, it is easy to do. Compared to the Imperial Fist, despite the cosmetic differences, you can easily spot the same design. Same for the Ultramarine brother, both enjoying some cool heavy weapon for additional coolness. And why not including another Indomitus comparison, for the Emperor? In the end, I want to look at two different styles of Terminator. The Cataphractii is the most adorned and slender of the two. The Indomitus looks definitely bulkier, but with a Spartan design. In terms of weapons, the Crimson Paladin has more options. I was personally interested in the autocannon, but it could be easily converted into a melee character with powersword and thunder shield, and you can use the autocannon for some other figure if you want. The 40k Terminator instead, it is much less flexible, but it is also much cheaper. Which one is the best will depend on your tastes. Having said that, I wish you a nice rest of the day assembling your Space Marines for the next crusade.